All right, guys. Just want to preface this video by saying, always remember that nothing that we say or put on the website should be taken as financial advice. It's more of insights into how we view the market and where we think the market is going. But every time I do take a trade that I take in my own portfolio, I'm always gonna just make a post about it because I like talking about my trades. I like explaining my thesis, explaining my conviction, showing how I use validation levels and invalidation levels to be in and out of my trades, what I look for when I enter trades, what I look for when I exit trades, just because I think it can be helpful. So, if you watch this video and you decide that you want to copy my trade, that has nothing to do with me. I'm not a financial advisor. I don't give financial advice. But with that being said, I want to talk about three opportunities that we've been waiting forever for to go along, or at least it feels like forever. And I want to preface this by saying that, the idea for these three trades are Gavin's idea with perfect confluence with the system that I use. And for those of you who still don't understand what Gavin does, Gavin called this entire Tesla move when price was up here at about 200. Gavin said price is going to go to 154, buy 154, and price will go up to 268. That's what Gavin said. And he had his waves for it. There was a lot of confluence in bullish divergence down here. So if we take a look at 1 hour and daily divergence and daily velocity, you guys could see very clearly that on this move down, hourly velocity showed extremely clear dip buying. So let's just get that out of the way. Divergence is when price makes a new low and velocity does not make a new low. You guys could see here, the most extreme velocity print came over here, and price proceeded to make 1, 2, 3 new lows while velocity got better the entire time. What that tells you is that there is buying going on, dip buying, people are buying the stock, and so there was confluence in our systems as well. Also, if we look at LDPM and we go to the 1-day time frame, let's just remove the triggers. You guys can see LDPM flip bullish Tesla at about 167, or actually originally flip bullish at 161, push higher, flip bearish for a second, but it was really bullish at like 166. Obviously, today it finally turned bearish after all that time. Why am I telling you this? Because the same way that, Gavin hit this, he has three other ideas that he thinks could play out in very similar fashion. So for me, I watched this entire move that he forecasted with utter perfection, and he called all the dips along the way, hedged downside extremely well, and he has my full trust. And so when he told us that he has new coming ideas for AMD, Google, and GME, those are the three stocks that we're watching, by the way. I decided to do some digging myself, and I'm not going to take it for granted when we have him in the room with us when he just called a masterful 10. By the way, this was a 10x. The calls that were bought here, I personally sold way early. That's just the kind of trader I am. I'm going to try not to make this mistake this time. I sold way early. You guys also can see this bullish trigger cross here, where the hourly trigger crossed above the daily trigger. You guys can see where the hourly trigger crossed above the weekly trigger, hourly trigger crossed above the monthly trigger, all led to big upside moves. So there's a lot of confluence along the way. But I tried to go in and see, what I could find for AMD, Google, and GME, and I was very pleasantly surprised. And so because my system and Gavin's system pretty much align perfectly once again, we're confident enough to start talking about these trades. So I want to start off with AMD. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar, I'm just going to explain what an airplane setup is really quickly. Let's see if there's any good examples. Oh, there is one right here. Perfect. Now, an airplane setup is when the hourly trigger, which is this green line, comes down to the daily trigger and, kind of airplanes off it. So it comes down. This would be considered a bearish cross where the hourly trigger crosses below the daily trigger, and you guys can see the downside. This is considered a bullish cross where the hourly trigger crosses above the daily trigger, followed by upside. This is called an airplane, where the hourly trigger comes down, doesn't cross, and then, turns off it, lifts off it, and that move is usually followed by really strong upside. So if we look at AMD currently, let's zoom out a bit. Let's go to the 1 hour. The hourly trigger right now is coming down to the daily trigger. Gavin at 129, literally at 130, called for a dip buy at 110. Everyone in the Discord knows that MSW wasn't around. Oh, and we don't even cover AMD yet. We actually shortly will cover AMD, and it will be included in all the tech stocks. If you're a tech stock member, we're going to include AMD very shortly, probably this week or next week, and with no extra charge, obviously. So he called for this move down, and the plan was to dip by a sweep of 110. So if I put in the levels right here, I had these on my chart all the way up here, from Gavin, and you guys could see where price bottomed today. So Gavin really wanted a sweep of 110 before going long, something like this. But there have been many times where we waited $1 or $2 too long and ended up missing a big upside move. So we'll see how that develops. Gavin will have his update as well about it. But for now, what I'm watching is the exact same setup, this airplane setup. So, the indicators will be on the chart, which is going to be annoying, but I'm just going to show you guys how that would look. Basically, you want to see the hourly trigger come down to the daily trigger, and you want to see the daily trigger, continue to move like this. Let's make that blue. And then you want to see price come up, maybe get, stuck in here for a while, and then it's actually bad. Let me do this again. Hold on. I'm gonna need to go in a shorter time frame, that's why. Okay, let's do this one more time. So okay. All right, and then you want to see price, bottom out here, come up, kind of like drift around for a bit here, and then break above the hourly trigger. And once that happens, that completes the airplane setup, and that's when we're expecting Gavin's going to have exact targets, but something like 140, 150. And remember, this setup is, where did we have it? Was it here? Yeah, very, very similar to something like this. And there might be some false signals as well, but here's how I personally trade something like this. The way I personally trade something like this is, there's the bottom fishing, which is a great method. It's just not something I do personally. What I do is I wait for the airplane to form, and once price gets a clean break above the hourly trigger, preferably I would love to see daily LDPM turn bullish, or at least the lower time frame turn bullish, some additional confluence to make sure liquidity agrees as well. But once I get that break, I like to enter right about here. Maybe once price breaks above the hourly trigger and then closes above the nearest level. That seems like great confluence. But I wait until the break, and then right after that, right after I buy, I set a stop loss below the hourly trigger. And so for this entire move, I only risked, let's say the move goes something like this. I only risked 10% of the position from the get-go. Because if I buy here, and let's say it happens next week. So let's just say Wednesday, June 28th, price moves back above the hourly trigger. If I buy August calls or September calls, which I most likely do, then if price moves back above the hourly trigger, like another 30 cents, I'm going to lose 5 to 10% of my position maximum. Can't lose any more than that. So I'm taking my risk reward in this trade, if I wait for the setup to form, is basically, you're risking 10%, and it could be 1,000% trade to the upside, 500%, 1,000%, a really big trade to the upside. Now, just by the way, in addition to this, don't think that it's just the airplane setup that has me looking bullish. It has a lot to do also, I should have mentioned this in the first place, with the, has a lot to do with the weekly trigger crossing above the monthly trigger. And this is the most bullish trigger cross that could possibly happen in a stock. So if you want to see an example of that, let's look at NVIDIA for a second. NVIDIA also a semiconductor, same family as AMD, which I'm sure you all know anyway. And let's just wait for this to load. All right, so notice what happened. Very similar to AMD. You had the hourly trigger above the daily trigger. And then once the weekly trigger crossed the monthly trigger, You had that pullback, fierce pullback to the daily trigger, and then price doubled, right? 200 to 400. And it was just a straight, beautiful uptrend the entire time with many airplanes formed. Here was an airplane, here was an airplane, here was an airplane. The hourly trigger coming down to the daily trigger and price breaking above, making a nice move to the upside. Now it's like a QQQ. Again, got the weekly trigger cross, got a sharp dip back down towards the daily trigger, and then erupted 329 to 370, $40 to the upside. So when you take a look at AMD here, when I take a look at AMD here, and I know price, and I know the weekly trigger just crossed above the monthly trigger, I know this stock should be extremely bullish going forward. I know this could easily set up in an airplane, and Gavin also is calling for a major push higher. I'm convinced, this is the kind of trade where I'm willing to risk my money simply because it all lines up. And if I can't take this trade, then what am I going to trade? This is just about as good as a setup as you're ever going to get from me and Gavin, where both of our stuff collide at once. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to blindly take the trade. Gavin's going to probably offer some kind of strategy where you can buy above here and close the trade if there's an hourly close below, or he's going to say buy on an hourly close above 110.10 and close the trade if there's an hourly close below. Both of those methods also work. His method also works. I'll probably take a starter if he says something like that there, and then complete my position when I get the confirmation that I want. So that's the AMD trade for you guys. Pretty simple. When Gavin enters or when I enter, I'll make a post about it. But that's it. And we think this could really be a big move to the upside. Now, I do want to point out that we've been calling this move for a long time. Gavin's been calling this move for a long time. I only recently got on board once I saw the setup, but some trader today was opening a lot of $140 calls. I think they were 3 months out. I'm not sure if they were September or August or something like that, but someone was definitely opening up a large amount of 140 calls. So whenever you guys see that, whenever we see that at near our expected low, that's great confluence for us as well. All right. With that being said, let's move on to Google, which will take a whole lot shorter because I already drew it out for you guys. I think I drew it on the 30-minute. Is that why there's gaps? Yeah. Okay. So again, very, very, very similar. So weekly trigger just crossed up above the monthly trigger. When that happens and the stock is in the most bullish trigger orientation, we expect monster upside. That's the truth. Like that just, it tells us that the trend is fully bullish now. Not really looking to short, although, if the hourly trigger instead of airplaning crosses below the daily trigger, sure. Yeah, you can, I can short this down to the weekly trigger because that's where price will probably go. But as for me, using the system, I don't want to be looking to go short because I know how bullish the trend now is now that the weekly trigger crossed the monthly trigger. If you guys want to see how this works, let me give you guys a quick look at Meta. All right. Excuse my drawings. You guys remember when Meta basically collapsed from 241 down to 90? You guys remember that? What happened? The weekly trigger crossed below the monthly trigger, and then the hourly trigger crossed below the daily trigger, and the rest is history. This cross happened at 235. Price went down all the way to 90. This was the weekly trigger crossing the monthly trigger to the downside. Look how long the trend lasted. This was a long trend before finally, price formed 3 bullish divergences at the bottom. Meaning, as price each day or on the daily time frame made 1 new low, 2 new low, and 3 new low, the most extreme velocity print on the daily time frame came on this price low. So price made 1 new low, 2 new low, 3 new low. Velocity is telling the story here, saying that a lot of buying is going on. And that was all the signs for the reversal. So when the trend does end, you'll always see it before on the velocity, and that'll give you the warning signs to get out. But for now, I missed that meta short. If I could go back in time, would I take that meta short? Of course, because the weekly trigger crossed below the monthly trigger. So here, the weekly trigger crossed above the monthly trigger. Everything tells me that Google should go on a multi-month uptrend right now. I don't want to miss this opportunity. So that being said, Gavin has very similar waves, which is excellent because it's all in confluence with each other. It's in confluence with the triggers. It's in confluence with Gavin's Elliott waves, and we're not just going to blindly jump into the trade. You can put the exact same strategy as we mentioned with AMD. Me personally, I'm going to use the exact same strategy as well. Gavin has like a level at 118 that he wants to buy it at. So he's going to give his own buying strategy. For me, I like waiting to the hourly trigger to come down, and I buy on a break above, and I'll set a stop loss probably below the daily trigger to give it some breathing room. But after that, I do expect price to erupt to the upside. Now, I want to show you guys something cool that we saw tonight. There was an incredible amount of sold puts on Google. So we all know, we say this all the time, that we see sold puts in the market. That usually leads to large price increases. For whatever reason, I'm not going to get into it right now. There's no point. It's not my business. It's not what you guys are here to learn. But when we see a large amount of sold puts, it usually leads to strong upside. That being said, I'm just going to wait for I'm downloading the Google PDF right now. So it'll take another second or two. But we did see an incredible amount of sold puts in the market in Google today, a 900% increase. And there are also a lot of retail traders calling out this head and shoulders. So shoulder, head, shoulder. There's for sure a tool here. Head and shoulders right here. So left shoulder, head. How does this work? Head, right shoulder. And then it cracked the neckline. And to many traders, that's a super bearish symbol. However, this is all a game. And as soon as all of retail starts getting bearish Google and wants to, short this down, of course, it could be right. And my confirmation for that will be if the hourly trigger crosses below the daily trigger, then yes, then this is indeed bearish. And I won't lose any money because I would have never purchased a position. But when lots of retail traders are all saying the same thing and all bet on one side, guess where the trade goes? The opposite direction. It's a tale as old as time. And so if I'm about to go long a stock, a lot of times I'll look out for what's FinTwit doing, what's Financial Twitter doing. Are they betting the opposite way? All right, I'm going to go long the stock. Just a tip to look out for. The biggest example of this was every single bearish account getting a lot of retail to buy puts when SPY was at much lower levels, calling for crashes, and all those puts just was fuel to the fire on SPY's climb higher. That being said, same Gavin will post his entry. This is going to be my kind of entry. Here we go. The Google report loaded. Box is a little broken there. Snapgraphs bearish currently, selling pressure below, purchasing support above. But usually when you see this amount of sold puts, none of that matters. So there was a time last week where we saw an incredible amount of sold puts on Lucid and price still dropped. So, that was one of the only times I can remember as long as I've started tracking this that it didn't work. You guys do remember I told you guys about Tesla on last Thursday. I said that Tesla had a 600% increase in sold puts, and Tesla absolutely erupted to the upside shortly after. Obviously, those puts were closed. Those sold puts were closed, but on Thursday, right here, I already drew it. Right here, after market on Thursday, I said 660% increase in sold puts on Tesla. Tesla moved from 257 to 277, a $20 move. So we have to take this seriously. And so, I like trading my strategy, trading my game, trading my levels, like buying above a trigger, stop loss below, shorting below a level, stop loss if there's an hourly close back above the level. That's how I do my trades because it has really good risk management. And in the past year or so, I can only remember a couple of trades that I ever lost more than 10%, ever. You ask anybody in the Discord, this is a pretty known thing. I don't do it. If I get the entry I want, then I have a tight invalidation. And if it gets hit, I get out. I know I have the ability, and the Discord room has the ability to find hundreds of setups every week. I don't have to ever focus too hard on one setup. But sometimes I like to risk, a small fun size bet. I usually like to do weeklies. If I see an increase in sold puts like that, I don't mind, taking a small gamble just based on the small puts. That doesn't have to do with my trading strategies, but it's something that's been proven to work more times than I can imagine. So when I see sold puts like that, I always like to gamble on some calls. But again, it's a gamble. It's not a real trade because I don't have validation or invalidation levels. But it is nice seeing that many sold puts with our thesis that we've had when Google was up here. You guys remember for a long time I had the box here. Even last night, if you go to the dashboard, for the longest time, ever since Meme Stock Watch was around, by the way, I've had that box at the daily trigger for Google saying that I'm just waiting for it to get hit. So today it was finally hit. Let's take a look at it. There we go, Google. So one more. Yeah. So Google, we actually saw 1,842% increase in bought puts yesterday and a ton also of sold calls, whether they were covered or uncovered or naked. And you guys could see price drop from like 123 all the way down here. We had possible contact tomorrow because of all the bearish positioning that we saw. Tons and tons of bearish positioning yesterday on Google. And, today, obviously you guys probably saw the update already, but, direct contact. Price actually came all the way down to the daily trigger, but as soon as it got in the box, felt obligated to post it. Again, this was a gap down, so this is annoying because, yeah, it was tough to trade. It wasn't much to gain from the trade, but it shows you guys, when you have the positioning works. And so just like yesterday, there was a huge increase in bought puts and a huge increase in sold puts, which are both synthetic short positions, bearish positions. So too when we see something like this, when 47% of those puts closed today. Only 4% of calls were bought back, but there's a 47% decrease in those bought puts and a 909% increase in sold calls. So again, definitely something to think about going in tomorrow. The last setup is GME, and I posted a GME video already on the meme stock channel, for the meme stock group. But again, same kind of airplane setup, same kind of airplane setting up here. And if the hourly trigger can get above the monthly trigger, obviously price would have to do that as well. Once that happens, more than likely price is going to erupt to the upside. So you guys could see on Tesla what happened when the hourly trigger crossed the monthly trigger, just absolute eruption to the upside. GME, very similar. Hourly, like if price is able to get that bullish close above 25 and finally break through the monthly trigger, which is the strongest acceleration level out of every single price in the entire in the entire GME, right? Out of every single price that you guys see here, from 1 to 100, 26.33 is the strongest acceleration level in the market. So if price moves through 26.33, that is the strongest acceleration possible. Now, keep in mind that this is actually really cool because we're coming into the end of the month. Monthly velocity is calculated at the end of the month. And as you guys know, when velocity is negative, you never expect price to be able to get through the trigger. So here, monthly velocity was negative, price rejected the monthly trigger. Also the weekly trigger here, monthly velocity negative, price rejected the monthly trigger. And let's just zoom out, make it easier to see. And in the month of June, price rejected the monthly trigger and price rejected the monthly trigger with negative velocity. Now watch this. All right, look at the velocity print. If price were to close the month right now, this would be the velocity print for next month. Half the negative velocity. That is now possible to break above the monthly trigger. It's going to be really hard to do it in June, or maybe in the last couple of days of the month, it's the same thing. So, maybe in the last couple of days of the month. But, if the closer price gets to the monthly trigger by the end of the month, if it's above it, it's the best because then it'll turn velocity positive. But if it's even over here, we're going to have no negative velocity for next month, none. And that means that there's no resistance waiting here anymore. There's no one waiting to sell this anymore. For the past months, velocity was telling us, there are sellers waiting at the monthly trigger. Look how negative the velocity is. There's sellers waiting here, sellers waiting here, sellers waiting here, sellers waiting here. If price can close above here, ending June, then in July, there's going to be no monthly velocity. There will be nothing stopping price from breaking through this monthly trigger and exploding to the upside in a very similar fashion that Tesla did over here. Again, it also helps that Gavin's waves show the exact same thing. a great confluence. So hope this video was useful to you guys. I hope that we'll be able to hit some of these trades, that I'll be able to hit some of these trades. Of course, I never ever would recommend following my personal trade because that's my own trade, that's my own plan. I'm just here to give over information that I see in the market. Whether it works or it doesn't, all trade ideas always have a plan, validation levels, invalidation levels, thesis backed by data, indicators, and analysis. And we're always doing our best. So if these hit, amazing, and if they miss, I'll try it 100 times. If I didn't know the result, I would try the same setup 100 times over and over again. If you guys have any questions about anything I talked about, always feel free to reach out in Twitter DM, Discord DM. I am very busy usually, but I'll always try my best to get to them at some point.